and this is going to be a special edition of Primetime because there are still a few things we wanted to share with you regarding Baselworld. I thought we might go for another A to Z of the fair as we did regarding the SHH, but there was no way we could do this without carrying on about Baselworld for the next 6 months. Yes, this is a really huge fair and there are still a few interesting brands and timepieces we didn't cover, and we'll come back on this shortly in this edition. But also some funny and interesting side stories we experienced there, and naturally some kind of analysis of this 2017 edition. What does it tell us? What were the trends? So we did our best to come with probably a slightly different approach to Baselworld and highlight these brands and individuals that you wouldn't see so easily elsewhere. And if I go by your many comments, well, I guess part of that mission was achieved. But let's now keep up with some forgotten timepieces, and we'll start with a new record set for the thinnest automatic watch movement, and this honor now belongs to Bulgari with the Octo Finissimo Automatic. Well, listen to this. This movement is 2.23mm thick, and with the case, this watch is only 5.15mm thick. It's all made out of titanium, bracelet included, and this watch really feels super light on the wrist. This Octo Finissimo really goes along the line of the strategy put in place a few years ago by Bulgari, and as they had already presented the world's thinnest tourbillon 2 years ago, the thinnest minute repeater last year, so the thinnest automatic movement was just a logical move for them. This is quite an achievement, I must say, but in all honesty, I'm not a huge fan of the Octo in general, never really got used to it, but that's just a question of personal taste, because I like nevertheless the idea that they dared to do it. Dared to do something different with its own identity. And since we were by Bulgari, well, we took the opportunity to see some other pieces and some pretty spectacular ones, because yes, Bulgari is first and foremost a jewelry house, and the combination of their skills on these timepieces is something quite special. On the sideline, I know that Bulgari is doing pretty well in terms of business. They've enjoyed a pretty solid development of their watchmaking activity, but I wonder if by doing so they didn't hurt to a certain extent Piaget, another brand both present in jewelry and watchmaking and especially known for its ultra-thin movement, so just food for thoughts. Anyhow, another brand also active on both sides is Chiappa, and they showed us the new version of their LUC perpetual calendar with big date, coming in a 43mm platinum case and limited to 20 pieces. This timepiece had been previously presented in a white and rose gold execution, so as you can expect with platinum version, it is a bit heavier on the wrist. We also saw an LUC Lunar one, more or less the same as the previous watch, but without the chrono, making it a little bit thinner. This one is also limited, but to 100 pieces. Still in the LUC collection, we saw an LUC XPS 1960 Officier, XPS meaning the extra flat movement of the brand. It's also limited to 100 pieces, and by Officier this means watches that have this kind of movable back cover or lid that you can open to appreciate the movement, and generally that you can engrave with elements of your liking. Well, in this case, engraving is already proposed and pays tribute to the original logo of the brand. In the Mille Miglia collection, and for the 90th anniversary edition of the famous Italian race, well, Chiappa introduced their first Geneva hallmark certified Mille Miglia, coming in a rose gold case with a white lacquered dial, and is limited to 90 pieces. But still in the same collection, Chiappa showed us this year's Mille Miglia edition watch that will be handed to all the drivers of this race, a bit more than 400, and another 1,000 watches will be produced that you will be able to buy directly. So Chiappa also introduced the Happy Ocean, water resistant to 300 meters, but they don't say it's a diver's watch because of probable legibility issues with all these diamonds, and coming at 7,800 Swiss francs for this 40mm watch, well, I'm pretty sure that this will be quite a success for them. And if you're really interested, there's also a full gem set version, but this one only resistant to 100 meters and comes at 49,000 Swiss francs, so just another story. So still with brands that are present on both sides, let's quickly talk about Harry Winston. I just wanted to mention some pretty nice métier d'art watches we saw with this silk dials and gold marking on them. That was pretty nice. But let's move on now and let's talk about more affordable watches, and we'll start with Everhart, who, following the success of the Scapholgraph 300 introduced last year, well, they presented a GMT version of this watch, which by the way is no longer considered as a diver's watch, and this watch comes at a decent price of 3,800 Swiss francs with the steel bracelet, 3,150 francs with the rubber version. But since it's the brand's 130th anniversary this year, well, they came out with a limited edition of their famous Chrono 4, naturally limited to 130 pieces. The particularity of this watch is the horizontal alignment of the 4 subdials, and this watch costs 8,630 Swiss francs compared to the 5,340 francs for the normal or the new version presented to us. Still in the affordable watch section, let's say a word about Oris, because I really think that this brand is part of the value for money club of watch brands, and the Atelier Caliber 113 launched this year is for sure a pretty decent watch. This watch holds the 4th generation of watch movement developed and manufactured by the brand since 2014, so quite active there. And it features what they call a business calendar with a number of the week indication, which also works as a month indicator, but also with the day and date indications, and very importantly, it benefits from 10 days of power reserve, quite something. And even more importantly, it is priced at 5,900 Swiss francs, so pretty neat, I think. But let's continue in that price category, as Eterna is celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Kon-Tiki expedition, and the Kon-Tiki is an important collection for them, and they therefore came with a few novelties there. Well, first, a bronze version limited to 300 pieces and priced at 2,890 Swiss francs, and I don't recall any other bronze watches at this price level. It comes in a 44mm case with a granite grey dial, it's water resistant 200 meters, and it's the brand's own movement inside, so not a bad deal either. And I would also like to mention the 1940 tachymeter watch based on a historic model, and this flyback chrono coming in this bronze polished case also looks pretty nice, and it's limited to 100 pieces. At Tag Heuer, we saw the revival of the Ottavia, and this watch now comes in a 43mm steel case, but 15.6mm thick, so quite thick, as it holds the in-house Heuer 02 chronograph movement beating at 4 Hz. A caliber that was initially developed a few years ago, but put to rest when Mr. Jean-Claude Biver took over the brand. So this movement is back in action, and I must say that this watch looks pretty cool. It comes either with a metal or leather bracelet, and is decently priced, meaning under the 5,000 Swiss franc mark. And Frédéric Constant continued down the route of affordable complication, and this year they introduced a flyback chronograph for less than 4,000 Swiss francs. Yep, you heard me right, and slightly above this for the gold-plated version. So the engine is their own manufactured movement, took quite some time to develop, but again, such a watch at this price is definitely sending a message. Okay, there are tons of other watches we could have covered, but that's it for the watches we wanted to mention in this summer edition. And let's now talk about the side stories, and as you can imagine, Baselworld is a place where there are plenty of them. Brands organize events and parties outside of the fair, but inside the hall they also try to make things move and groove around their booth. And I mentioned Bulgari before, and they definitely made it happen again this year when they formally introduced this new ultra-flat record holder timepiece. So up they went for the show with some nice celebrities that I didn't know any of them, I must admit, but apparently they were super famous. Along that line, Hublot made no exception, and they had legendary group Depeche Mode on their stand for a press conference, and the previous night they had organized a private concert for some happy few. By Maurice Lacroix, the theme was more artistic, with a real happening and on-site creation with American artist Alexa Mead, who showed us her original 2D-like painting skills, and so let's quickly listen to her. Alexa, could you describe us a little bit your art?
In my work, I paint directly into a three-dimensional space in a way that makes it look like a two-dimensional painting. And for Maurice Lacroix, I've painted the New York City skyline and created the view of being in a beautiful New York apartment and looking out and seeing your world.
Time being important, how long has it taken you?
Time being important, it's probably been 6 hours today of painting, and yesterday about 15 hours of painting.
And Stefan, so how did this collaboration came into being?
Well, you know, we have a new campaign for our Icon watch, which is our biggest revelation of this year. And we're looking for something very fresh, something new for the brand. And we thought, okay, let's work with an artist. But more important, I mean, we saw what Alexa was doing, and we started talking together, and we saw, okay, what you can do is, hey, can you do a skyline? Can we integrate this? And really working together. And we're really, you know, really impressed of the talent she has and the effect. And it's something really good for the brand, so we really want to push the freshness here.
So all the brands try to exist and create some hype around them during the show, but let's now talk about the trends and what analysis can we make of this 2017 edition of Baselworld. Well, first, and as mentioned in our introduction of the show, there were 200 exhibitors less than the previous year. That's quite a lot, but there are still 1,300 of them participating, and you have to remember that it's not only watchmakers, as Baselworld is also a massive jewelry show, and also for some suppliers of the industry that take part in this almost 10-day long fair. But as this is a rather costly thing to attend and organize, well, you could really hear here and there the comments about the absolute necessity of being present. Okay, it might be costly, but as an exhibitor, if you get a good return out of it in terms of business and buzz generated around you, well, then no problem. But this is precisely not necessarily the case for everyone anymore, or at least this is being questioned by quite a lot of people, so probably a bit of danger for the organizers, and they need to get their copy more in line with the evolving economic climate if they don't want other brands failing to participate for the next editions. So we saw, for instance, many brands having side presence in local hotels, and this could most certainly continue in the future. So this led to have much more a new space, reason why we saw that many more bars and restaurants directly in some alleys of the fair, and we clearly get it that putting all the independence from what was previously called the palace to the atelier was a necessity, not to have too much empty spaces sending the wrong message. Well, actually, this atelier place was pretty nice, not too easy to find at first, but nevertheless pretty nice and cozy, and I think most brands were pretty happy about it. Things have changed, the dynamic has changed for the organizers, and we already heard, for instance, that Hermès will no longer participate at Basel and will instead be joining the SIHH in Geneva next year, and there might be some other moves in that direction that will be announced shortly, and actually there are already a few crazy rumors, but I won't go there, well, not yet at least. Well, let's get back to watches, and the fact that we saw so many examples of watches positioned at more reasonable prices is also a clear indication of adapting times. This is a good thing for the consumer, you get more for your buck, but it's nevertheless the sign of a fragile balance that is ahead for many watch brands, and this could lead to some more shocking news in the months to come. Okay, and I already said this, but this won't have any impact on my appreciation of watchmaking, and I'm pretty sure that in a certain way all this is pretty good for the industry and everybody else, I mean you the consumer. Yeah, but okay, it might be a little bit painful for some. Well, in terms of other trends, let's say that we saw vintage-inspired watches everywhere, as if this was part of the solution for brands. And what does it tell us? Well, I think, and as Mr. Bieber would say, these watches reflect a bit more of this eternity dimension that he often talks about. The link with the past, and therefore this kind of indirect value proposition contained in an object that went through time is there to reassure the customer that he's making a sound purchasing decision when he buys this kind of watch. So we see real vintage watches hold some of their value on the second-hand and auction market, and this signals subconsciously that these watches might better keep their value. Okay, one way of looking at it. But there is also this hipster wave or fashion that went through this, and it helps keeping the hype in some of these objects. And all this is even more important at a moment where the connected watch is for sure an ever-growing reality. TAG Heuer introduced their new connected watch, and many people were playing with it. But additionally, and for the first time, we saw Samsung being directly present during this fair, and their booth was often totally crowded. So all these signs that things are evolving, and I really don't see traditional brands going down that alley, will make any sense. But it really points out that brands have to refocus on what makes them special in their own little territory and stick with it. So growth should no longer be seen as an objective, but sustainability most certainly, and growth might return, but as a consequence. Another identified trend was the massive presence of blue dial watches. I like blue, so that's all fine for me. But this was really noticeable almost with every brand we visited, and it amused me to how sometimes you have these trends that everyone is pursuing at the very same time. And still, on a very personal note, I admit that I really fell in love with not a new watch, but a new version of a watch, and this was the Hermès Slim Perpetual Calendar, coming in a platinum case with blue dial, yes, blue, and limited to 100 pieces. So I always wanted a QP, and this one really appealed to me. And I know it's a lot of money, but at 38,000 Swiss francs, I think this is really well-positioned timepiece. But I guess I'll have to wait on this one, just another timepiece on the wish list, and to keep dreaming keeps the inspiration and motivation going. So overall, a good and interesting show. We were naturally happy to participate and produce our videos. We were happy to see so many friends, whether within the brands or with our colleagues. And yes, we could have talked about Baselworld for still quite some time, but now it's time to move on and continue with our regular video reports coming back to you very shortly. But I have to be honest, we might still publish a couple of little Baselworld related videos in the days to come. I have to admit this. And before we finish, just wanted to share quite a crazy story regarding a $1 million mechanical cigar box called Imperiale. This limited edition was presented in the atelier section of Baselworld, and of course we had to have a look at it. This humidor works like a safe. The combination is set with the letters of the brands. You need to press them in a certain order, and then the magic happens with all these mechanical parts going into action. Okay, this humidor has place only for 24 cigars. It's full of high tech and even has a tourbillon watch on it. But at 1 mil, well, I guess we'll also have to pass on this one. So any of you interested for your yacht, well, you know now where to find this. Okay, so thanks for all the great feedback and support we received from you guys. Really makes us incredibly happy. And just for info, the candidacy period for the watchmaking road trip is indeed now closed, and we'll get back to you regarding the next step of this very, very soon. And of course, we have to naturally talk about this new sport competition with the CEO handstand world record attempt that we saw at Fabergé. Enjoy. Today we're introducing a new sport competition here at Baselworld, and to officially celebrate the success of this new chronograph by Fabergé, and we have Jean-Marc Viderecht, the official timekeeper, and we're introducing world record attempt of CEO handstand competition. Off we go with Mr. Sean Gilbertson. So, what about the timing?
15 minutes, 20 seconds, and 100.
And the time down under on my DTZ is 3:30 in the morning.
Well, 11 seconds.
Okay, yeah, I thought, yeah. Well, there we go for a new world record. I guess we're waiting for new people to attempt this in this CEO competition. Thank you very much. Bravo. So all the very best to you. Thanks for your time, and see you real soon.